Alright guys, welcome back to another video. Today we're here at this place called Rancho Las Ilusiones, which is actually not too far from Rosarito, Mexico. Some of you guys may know, I come down here usually pretty often throughout the weekends just to be able to get away from everything. I do go through a lot of periods of stress with taxes, dealing with people. Usually when I get a lot of clients that talk to me on a weekly basis, they are always venting a lot of their frustrations that they have regarding their problems. And so one of the things that I want to discuss today is the housing market. Now, I know that a lot of you out there are homeowners, and a lot of you out there are aspiring homeowners. And I know it's very difficult to be able to purchase a property right now. For all of you right now that are trying to save your down payment for a home, I commend you. Continue to do what you can to be able to save. But a lot of the times it's actually not the best move to be able to grab all that money that you have and put it on a property, which a lot of people automatically think that purchasing a home is a good investment. Now, that is up for debate. I know a lot of people out there think that buying a primary residence is probably one of the best investments they can make, which you do need a place to live. I agree with that. But I really do think that there are a lot of different asset classes that you can actually put that money into to be able to make your wealth grow over time, versus basically locking up all that money on a primary residence. That is not only going to cause you stress in the future, but you are going to be responsible for all the maintenance, property taxes, and the insurance will continue to go up over the years. So even though a lot of people are very adamant of thinking that, you know, after 10, 20 years, maybe their property has appreciated a couple $100,000, you do have to remember that all of the interest that you paid year after year after year during the first 10, 15 years of that mortgage, it's usually like if you were paying rent. Because even though a lot of people have the misconception that all of that interest, that they're going to be able to take it off on their taxes every single year, most of the time, the actual tax savings behind all that interest is very little. So as some of you may know, when you file your taxes, you do get a chance to write off a lot of that mortgage interest. The problem is that the IRS, every single year, they raise the bar and they make it more difficult for people to write off their mortgage interest. So a lot of the times what ends up happening with a lot of people, especially if they're paying a low interest rate on their mortgages, is they don't even take advantage of the mortgage interest deduction on their federal return. Now, if you are living in a state that does allow you to take a mortgage interest deduction, maybe you will get some of it on your state return. But even then, I think it's very important that if you do have an accountant, for you to ask them, what is it that you are actually saving by including this mortgage interest? Because I think a lot of you will be surprised. You think that you are getting a really, really good deal on your tax return, but in reality, maybe you only save a couple $100 because you paid $15,000 to $20,000 of mortgage interest throughout the year. And this money, like I said, once it's paid, it's gone. It's just like paying rent. And I know a lot of people say, oh, well, if you pay rent, you're throwing away your money. Well, yeah, I mean, if you look at it that way, you still have to find a place to live, right? You still have to pay rent. But I think it's gotten to the point right now where people are actually paying more on their mortgage than they would on a rent. So if you're out there paying $3,800 a month on the rent on a property, that equivalent house, you maybe end up paying more money per month on the mortgage, because not only do you have to include the mortgage, you have to include the insurance, you have to include the property taxes, HOA, and maintenance. Anything could happen. So you could end up paying quite a bit of money just to be able to sustain that lifestyle, to be able to own that home. Not only that, but when you do sell the property, a lot of the times people do get the chance to be able to have $250,000 exclusion if they're single on the first $250,000 of capital gains. Or if you are married and you do file a married filing joint return, then you can go ahead and take $500,000, the first $500,000 of gains. Those can be completely excluded from your tax return, so you do not have to pay a dime. And I think that's one of the things that I get a lot of questions from people, where lately I've been getting a lot of people that have been selling their primary residences. And that's one of the main confusions, where people are really surprised that they do not have to pay a dime in taxes, because all of a sudden, all of those gains, they're excluded. So I think it's very important that if you do plan to sell a residence, whether it be a primary residence, secondary residence, or even a vacation home, I highly recommend that before you do anything, you reach out to an accountant or someone that has experience, and maybe they'll be able to answer all your questions. The last thing you want to do is to be able to get hit with a real large tax bill. Now, when you do sell a primary residence, you have to make sure that it was your primary residence at least 2 out of the last 5 years. So that's very important too, that you have proper documentation that states that. Now, if you do have a secondary residence, where maybe you used it as a rental, because a lot of people have secondary residences that use them as Airbnbs, that gets a little bit more complex, because then you have to figure out how long you were in it as a primary, because it could have been a primary at one point, then maybe you moved into another property, and then that became an Airbnb, which is actually very, very common. And then if you started using it as an Airbnb, that becomes business property. So you have to be very careful too. When you sell that property, make sure you reach out to an accountant to be able to determine how much of that gain is actually taxed. Now, if you do have a business property, like a rental property that you buy, and you exclusively use it just for business, and you decided to sell it, you also have to make sure that you take into account every single year that you get the depreciation that you are allowed on that property. Because a lot of the times what ends up happening is, there's a lot of clients that I've ran across over the years that they'll have rental property that they have actually taken advantage of for many, many years, but that rental property, for some reason, they never took depreciation on it. Never took depreciation on that rental property, but when they did sell it, the IRS expects you to pay a higher rate of tax on that depreciation you actually never took. So depreciation is more like a paper deduction, which means that no money actually exchanged hands, but you are able to get a deduction for depreciation of that property when you rent it. So just make sure that if you do prepare taxes and that have a rental property, that you take that deduction, because you will be surprised how many people I run across that do not take that deduction. That is very, very overlooked. So I think those are the things that a lot of people are looking for answers to, especially right now in this environment, where more and more people, ever since around 2020, 2021, I've gotten a ton of people that have sold property, different circumstances. I have had instances where there's people that will sell property that is mixed use, which means that maybe it'll be a duplex, and 50% of it will be a primary residence, 50% of it will be a rental residence. And so it can get a little bit complex. So again, this is just a reminder that if you do sell it, I highly recommend that you seek advice and that you find someone that's knowledgeable in that area. Right now, we're in a time of uncertainty with the interest rates. So I know that these past couple years, house prices have definitely increased quite a bit. And even 2 years ago, they were already to a point where, in my opinion, I feel like some home prices in some areas were really inflated. People are still purchasing properties and going broke trying to keep them, which means that they're getting into credit card debt, they're getting into other types of debt with people and with other institutions to be able to keep affording a lifestyle that they're just falling behind more every single month. So what usually they got told is, the fallacy is that you buy the property in 2023, and by 2024 or maybe even 2025, don't worry, interest rates are going to come down and you will be able to refinance. Well, to me, I think that that's setting up people for failure, because some of these people even got caught up to the point where now maybe the loan that they had originally was an adjustable rate mortgage, or maybe they had a balloon payment after 2 years. some people get caught up in some really crazy situations that could end up getting them into a position where maybe they'll lose their home. And so that's why we have to be very, very careful that when you purchase a property, you purchase something that's within your means and that's actually a good deal for you. Because even though, you know, maybe you have the person that's selling you the property that they're happy because they're getting rid of it, maybe they're moving out of state, or maybe they're retiring or downsizing. A lot of people put a lot of pressure on these buyers and they end up succumbing to the pressure, maybe because they do have the money. And so then they get in a kind of situation where they don't have enough liquid assets to be able to keep going. So just be very, very careful. Right now, the interest rates are still relatively high from what they were, you know, 5-6 years ago. And we don't know if the interest rates are going to go down within the next year or two. Right now, the current administration, I think they are pushing to be able to bring interest rates down, because that's really the only way that this government is going to be able to start paying down some of this debt that it has. It's in the trillions of dollars, and it's very difficult for the government to be able to start paying this down if the interest rates continue to be high. But the problem is that if they do lower interest rates, yes, they might help some people to be able to refinance, but the problem is that then everything is going to end up getting more expensive, because, as some of you may know, that lowering the interest rates is going to cause more inflation. And so it's a double-edged sword. We don't know where we're going to go from here. But one thing that I do know is that if you continue to be able to live within your means and purchase property that you can truly afford, then you should be set up in a good situation. And I do think it's very important that if you are able to be able to make extra monthly payments to your mortgage, even if it's $100 a month, anything helps. I am a firm believer in prepaying down anything that you owe that has a high interest rate, whether it be a home, auto, credit cards, anything. So if you have an auto loan that's probably 60 months and you can afford giving them another $100 a month, do it, because you'll be surprised how fast you will pay down that loan. Same thing goes with houses. If you have a mortgage payment that's $3,500 a month and you can give them an additional $300 a month on top of that mortgage every single month, you will be surprised how fast that mortgage, you'll start bringing it down after a couple years. So continue to do what you can, continue to save. I know that sometimes it sounds like a broken record, but I think if some of you instill this in your minds that you have to save, yes, sometimes it's good to come out, de-stress yourself, maybe do things here and there. Do things that you can afford that will not put you into greater stress, things that will actually benefit you in life, because you do have to live. At the end of the day, you can save all you want, but you will live very miserable if you do not spend your money wisely. So it's very important for you to have that balance. And only you as an individual, knowing how much money you bring in and what your monthly expenses are, you can set priorities as to what's important to you. That's one of the things that I wanted to bring to you guys today, just a little bit of my knowledge. Again, I do have people that continue to reach out to me on a weekly basis regarding selling property. Also, here's another tidbit for you guys, and this is something that a lot of people ask me as well. Lately, these past couple years, unfortunately, we are in a situation right now where there's a lot of people that are having their parents pass away. That's been going on very frequently these last couple years, where you have people in their 70s, 80s, and 90s passing away. And a lot of these people are passing away and they are leaving their primary residences, or maybe even their secondary residences, or even rental properties, to their heirs, to their beneficiaries, which a lot of them right now, they're in the baby boomer generation. And so one of the biggest things that I get asked as well is, what's going to happen to this primary residence? What's going to happen to all these properties? Will I get taxed on all the money that gets distributed to me and my siblings? The answer to that, the short answer to that, is a lot of people think that these properties, they have to be placed into some sort of trust to be able to get a step up in basis, which in reality, you don't need a trust. It is recommended that you do have a trust, because it's a lot easier for the siblings and for the heirs to be able to get access to all that property. But usually you would get a step up in basis in most cases. So if, let's say your parents that are in their 80s or 90s, let's say they brought a property for $80,000 back in the 70s, and now they pass away, and that property is worth $1.4 million, which is actually very common. If you live in a state that has appreciated a lot, that property, when the heirs inherit it within the trust, more than likely, they're going to be able to get a step up in value, which means on the date of death that that parent passed away, that is the value that the heirs are going to be able to get. So when they do sell the property, then if they sell it at a very similar value, then guess what? They will not be responsible for the gain. So maybe you'll have a small gain if the property appreciated within that period, but if you sell the property fast enough after the date of death, most of that money will not have any capital gains, which means that you'll be able to distribute that money to the heirs without having to pay capital gains tax. But again, this is just from my experience, from what I've seen with a lot of my clients going on right now. And that also applies to stocks. A lot of people have a lot of investments over the years. I have a lot of clients that are in their 70s, 80s, and 90s that have accumulated stocks from many, many years ago, where maybe they bought them when they were really, really low, and now they've appreciated to several $1,000,000, or maybe, you know, 100,000, 200,000, 300,000, and the heirs are able to get access to this money. So what's good is you have to keep track of your records. I know sometimes it's very difficult to be able to talk money with parents, but at the end of the day, usually when you get that step up, most of these heirs will be able to inherit a lot of this money without having to pay additional capital gains if they act quickly and they reach out to an accountant or an attorney that knows how to be able to apply these rules. So again, it's very important that if you do run into a situation where you have parents that are older, that you sit down with them and that you talk about these subjects and that you prepare and you be proactive about these types of things, because anything could happen in life. So you want to be prepared. So when the time does come that they do pass away, you'll be able to act fast and take advantage of what's out there right now. Right now, I feel like the rules to be able to take advantage, I think it's good because then you'll be able to inherit these assets and apply them correctly. So even though there's a lot of people out there that say that they're broke, maybe their parents are not that broke. And so if their parents pass away, that actually would probably be a good time for this baby boomer generation that's inheriting all this wealth to be able to pay down some of the debt. If they have a mortgage, pay it off. And if you're fortunate enough, even have some money to be able to invest in gold and silver and maybe even cryptocurrency if that's your thing. So again, I'm going to go ahead and leave it here. I'm going to go ahead and have a good breakfast here. It's currently, I think, somewhere like around 1 p.m. Pretty hungry right now. Going to go ahead and continue on with my day. If you have any questions about some of these subjects, please leave them in the comments down below. I will try to answer some of them. I know a lot of people have a lot of questions. If I can answer some of them in the comment section, I definitely will. That way I can share some of my knowledge with you. And again, all of this, I'm doing it because I love to help people. That's the reason why I do these videos, to be able to help people, to be able to educate people, and to be able to make sure that people are on the right path. Because right now, we're in a situation where there's a lot of inheriting going on. So we all want to make sure that we take advantage of that and apply it the correct way. So continue to view my videos, continue to subscribe to my content. Thank you, everybody. I think right now we're a little bit over 4,000 subscribers. I am really grateful for that. And hopefully soon we'll be at 5,000. So we'll see you guys in the next one. Take care. I'm going to put some of this on here. Now, this is the type of sauce that I usually like with this.
Está deliciosa, con la cosa suavecita.
Some of this. These are tacos.